All right, let's dive in. Today we're talking about Barbatos, a spirit from the Goetic tradition. And if you're picturing your typical run-of-the-mill demon, well, you can throw that idea right out the window. Barbatos is something else entirely. A scholar, an administrator, a philosopher. And his whole story really kicks off with this one fascinating riddle.
So get this, the name Barbatos literally means the bearded one. But here's the kicker. Almost every description we have of him says he's clean-shaven. How does that even work? Now, you might think that's just a weird little detail, but trust me, it's not. It's the key, the central paradox that helps us understand who this infernal intellectual really is. So let's start pulling at that thread.
Okay, so first up, this paradoxical name. The whole thing is about wisdom that goes way beyond just what you see on the surface.
Right, so let's break down the name itself. Barbatos comes straight from the Latin word barbatus, which, you guessed it, means bearded. But back then, this was way more than just about facial hair. It was a symbol. You know, it conjured up this image of a wise old man, a seasoned philosopher, someone just packed with knowledge and experience.
And this is where it gets really interesting. You've got his name, the bearded one, on one side. But then on the other, occult tradition almost always describes him in human form with long white hair, but no beard, totally clean-shaven. So what gives? Well, the contrast is kind of the whole point. It suggests his beard isn't a physical thing at all. It's a metaphor for his wisdom, the kind that comes from a really mature intellect, not just from being old.
So, the big takeaway here is that this paradox is completely intentional. It's a giant flashing sign telling us that Barbatos is all about deep knowledge and scholarly insight. He's not defined by the raw, ferocious power you might expect from a demon. He's different.
Okay, and this scholarly nature of his, it's totally reflected in his day job, if you can call it that. See, he's not some lone agent of chaos. He's actually an administrator in a world you'd think is pure chaos.
Yeah, this guy is no lone wolf. He's a trusted administrator. Think of it like a cosmic org chart. He reports directly to Sanatatia, who's basically the commander-in-chief of Satan's army, and he works alongside other big names like Aemon and Pruslis. And get this, some traditions even say he's one of only 4 key assistants to the incredibly powerful Astaroth. That's a level of trust that tells you he's a serious player in the infernal elite.
And we're not talking about a small team here. He's in charge of a massive force, 30 legions of spirits. And he doesn't just command them directly. He manages this whole operation through his own organized network of chiefs and servitors. He's basically a middle manager in this huge, supernatural bureaucracy. It's fascinating.
So, okay, you've got this entity with all this knowledge, all this administrative power. How in the world do you even get a meeting with him? Well, the answer comes down to one thing. Very, very precise ritual.
Yeah, trying to contact Barbatos is definitely not a casual affair. You have to follow some very specific rules. First off, timing is everything. It has to be when the sun is in Sagittarius, so we're talking late November to late December. And second, the summoner has to wear his seal of obedience. And believe me, this isn't just for decoration. It's a protective talisman, and it's literally the key that unlocks the whole interaction.
This quote really nails it. The ritual isn't just some empty ceremony. It's the mechanism you need to access his knowledge. That sigil, it's the bridge, it's the connection point that lets a practitioner tap into his incredible ability to see the past and future. It's what makes the impossible, well, possible. But you know, the story doesn't just stop with these ancient texts. Of course not. Like any powerful figure, the idea of Barbatos has kept evolving, and he's taken on some really fascinating new roles in modern practices.
Nowadays, a lot of people see him as this kind of nature mystic. He's the one you turn to if you want to understand animals, or even give them a voice, literally enabling communication. It's pretty wild. Some modern sources even link him to people born in late April, acting as a sort of spiritual guide or servant demon for them. He's really transformed into this dynamic symbol for harmony, both with nature and, between people.
But hold on, don't let all this talk about harmony make you think he's a pushover. Not even close. Because beneath that scholarly surface, there's a seriously formidable protector, a hidden edge that, as we'll see, perfectly balances out his role as a peacemaker.
And here it is, his dual nature laid out plain and simple. On one hand, you have the reconciler, the one who mends friendships and bridges the gap between humans and nature. But on the other hand, you've got the protector. This is the Barbatos who carries a bow and quiver, and some texts say his arrows cause wounds that are almost impossible to heal. So his power to create peace is backed up by some serious, undeniable power to defend it.
And where does all this complexity come from? Well, it might go all the way back to his origins. See, before the fall, he wasn't just any angel. He may have belonged to two different high-ranking orders, the Virtues and the Dominions. Having a dual angelic heritage like that, it makes him one of the most complex, multi-layered spirits in the entire Goetic lineup, for sure. So when you take all these different pieces, the scholar, the administrator, the fierce protector, the nature mystic, and you put them all together, you start to see that they're all pointing in one direction. They all serve one primary function. At his very core, Barbatos is a reconciler.
Really, his whole legacy is about bridging divides. He brings friends back together, he connects us to the animal world, and it's said he even holds on to a piece of his original angelic nature, which lets him act as a bridge between heavenly wisdom and earthly knowledge. It seems like his entire purpose is to restore balance and uncover truth, even if it means breaking the spells of others to show what's really there.
And so, in the end, that whole story about the unseen beard becomes this incredible parable, doesn't it? It shows us that real wisdom often isn't what it looks like on the surface. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest strength isn't about brute force at all, but about the power to connect, to understand, and to reconcile. Which leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. In a world that feels so divided, what can we learn from a spirit whose greatest power is all about restoring harmony?